What if brain recovery isn't just about getting back to baseline, but rewiring the brain for a dynamic future filled with possibility? I'm Kylie Como, legal nurse consultant here at Shane Smith Law, and this is Mind Matters, Navigating Head Injuries and Concussions, where we look at traumatic brain injury from every angle, whether it's medical, legal, or lived experience perspectives. Before we begin, take a look below, give us a like, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss what's ahead. Today, we're joined by Tanja Yardley, founder and CEO of Brainovation Network, a health technology company working to connect neuroscience, clinical practice, and innovation to improve brain health and performance. In today's conversation, we're going to talk about that mission, why brain health matters, and how innovation can help bridge that gap between research and actual care. Tanja, it's good to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's lovely to meet you.
Yes, you as well. So Tanja, for our listeners meeting you for the first time, can you share maybe a little bit about who you are, your background, and kind of what led you into this brain health innovation space?
Absolutely. I was trained as a physical therapist about 35 years ago, and I worked in all different areas of health and brain health and interdisciplinary care. And then about 10 years ago, I went through a really, really profound burnout. I was working with a big healthcare company and overseeing 53 sites, raising kids and dealing with a divorce all at the same time. And it was a very difficult time, and I hit the wall and I was out for about 3 months, really couldn't lift my head off the pillow. And over that period of time, realizing how fragile our brains and bodies can be under extreme duress, I actually started researching wildly about the brain. And interestingly enough, when I graduated from university, I did my thesis on neuroplasticity and Parkinson's disease. So I had some concept of neuroplasticity. And so as I researched more and more about how the brain can rewire itself, how we make ourselves more resilient to stress, how we recover from brain injuries and different types of trauma, I got incredibly fascinated and then ended up in my absolute dream job working at a health innovation lab where we had a research center doing clinical trials. We had a neuroplasticity clinic working with people who had all different kinds of brain and mental health injuries. And then getting out into the world and learning about neurotechnology. So I worked for a period of time in my old company as a VP of innovation. So I was researching all of the things coming down the pipe, from blockchain to virtual reality to robotics to everything. So yeah, I had a really interesting job. So I was able to parlay those skills into the brain innovation environment. And I spent about 7 years working alongside a research team and understanding everything about how the brain rewires itself. And yeah, we were doing some really, really incredible research. We were looking at electrical stimulation of the brain. We were looking at, light therapies like infrared. We were looking at sound therapies. We were actually studying things like psychedelics and how psychedelics change the brain. So it was really a cool job. And then the pandemic hit. And so I had been traveling quite a distance to work. And I ended up spending more time at home. And I met this woman in a book club who'd had 3 back-to-back terrible car accidents. She was really struggling with her brain health. She had vestibular migraines. She couldn't stand on a pattern floor without getting nauseous. She couldn't run anymore. She wasn't working. She was just really having a hard time. And so someone connected us and said, hey, you should meet Tanja. She works in a brain health research environment. And so we started chatting. And I started bringing the technologies home that I was using in the lab on the weekends and working with her brain. And we actually ended up having a very dramatic recovery. So she's now doing all the things she wanted to do. She's back to running. Her vestibular migraines have shifted. And she had been in that state for 3 or 4 years without really any relief. So that lit a fire in me when I realized that most of the people that I love and know in my day-to-day life have no access to these kinds of tools. They're either siloed away in a lab somewhere, or you have to have, a gazillion dollars to get to the doctor that has that technology in some foreign place. And so it just galvanized something in me about making neurotechnology and the skill sets around it available to everyday folks. And that actually stimulated both the creation of a clinic in my community for vets and first responders. We're working with PTSD and chronic pain. And also it was the advent of the Brainovation Network, which is taking those tools and scaling them to other clinics and helping people learn how to use technologies and embed them into care.
I love how you had your foundation in direct patient care as a PT. I'm myself, being a nurse, I share that you just connect with patients, when you're face to face and you're hands on. You develop that I don't know, it's just a much deeper connection than sitting in some office setting and directing policy development, all that. Not that we need that, and you've gone on to do those things, but your foundation being in direct patient care, love that. And then I can see it, you laid it out beautifully. You talk about neuroplasticity. We've had some providers on our show in episodes past. It's a fascinating concept. Would you please explain to our audience, given your expertise and your work experience, neuroplasticity in simple terms to someone maybe who's never heard the word before?
Absolutely. One of my philosophies is that brain health is everything health. This control panel up here, manages everything. It manages our mobility. It manages our thoughts. It controls what memories we hold, how we learn, what our emotional experience of the world is. And it's constantly changing in response to feedback and the things going on in the world. And yet, as a clinician, it was so fascinating to me. I've spent 35 years helping people treat symptoms and not really at some level thinking about how those symptoms are actually controlled by one control unit. And they might be modulated by other factors happening, like what you eat or how you slept or any number of other things. But really, we've been focusing on treating the joint or treating the knee or treating the mobility issue, not really thinking about the circuitry that's actually impacting things. And so normally our nervous system communicates through a series of chemical and electrical signals, and we have a much bigger ability to affect that than we think we have. And so neuroplasticity is really the brain's ability to build new pathways and rewire itself in response to different stimuli. And unfortunately, when we're under duress or stress or illness for long periods of time, we tend to have these firing patterns that either reflect pain. So we have a pain signal that's traveling from your brain in your body, and you feel pain in the joint, or you have these other repetitious patterns like bang, 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 anxiety, or perseverating thoughts over and over and over again. And so there are lots of different modalities that we can actually tweak that nervous system and that brain and actually encourage different signals to fire, or new parts of the brain to get activated, or new neuron endings to grow, so that we can actually rewire new pathways. And there's a lot of different kind of scientific ways of approaching that, but it's fascinating, especially in the last 5 years, how many things have emerged that we can actually use as tools to help our brain rewire.
That's a great explanation. It really, so much of the time, we see injuries as those objective, and heart injuries, joint injuries, broken bones, what have you. When you think about the brain, people tend to have that misconception of, it's this mysterious, organ that, we just really don't know much about. And we don't. There's a lot we don't know about it. But, in the past, couple of decades, really, we have learned so much, to your point, about that neuroplasticity, about how you can build new neural pathways. An old dog can learn new tricks after all. So I think that's a fantastic explanation. You talk about that rewiring. What might that look like in practical terms, for somebody recovering, trying to improve that function?
It's actually so encouraging to me to see what's possible. We, in our clinic, when I worked with Dawn, my partner, in our clinic called Broken Squirrel Wellness, which is for vets and first responders, we initially started working with first responders during the pandemic. And we started to get a lot of veterans coming into our clinic as well. And they had been labeled treatment resistant. Some of them were 20 or more years past the incident or the injury that happened to them. And they had what is often termed treatment resistant chronic pain, or treatment resistant PTSD, or in many cases, they had a lot of sleep and gut problems kind of alongside. And a lot of these people were on some form of disability pension because their symptoms had simply not responded to anything. And so it was interesting, as we brought the neurotechnologies into our clinic and we started treating both the symptoms and the circuitry underlying, and usually we get them for about 12 weeks. And in the research environment where I'd been working with different, what they call neuromodulation technologies, we were finding it was like 12 to 14 weeks before you see a change that's more durable, that tends to stick and last over and over again, versus just having a state change. Like you might go to a physio like me, or a massage therapist or chiro, and have an immediate that feels better. But often with some of these more chronic conditions, a few days goes by and then, the pain creeps back in, or the mobility issue resurfaces. And so our goal always with treatment is to actually create a new neural pathway that's durable, which means that it doesn't just disappear, that it's not just a state change, that it actually lasts for some period of time, hopefully forever. And in many cases, we've had that experience. So as we started working with people and treating their nervous system using infrared light or vibration or different things that we could repeat over and over and over and over again over a course of like 12 to 14 weeks, we started to notice that some of the people that had been labeled treatment resistant were responding and responding beautifully, to the extent that some of them, when they went back to be retested, weren't actually qualifying for that diagnosis anymore. So it's really incredible when you can stick to something consistently, and if you make it simple so it's not complicated to do, doesn't take a long period of time. A lot of the treatments that we're working with people on take 10 or 15 minutes, and you just repeat them over and over again until the new pathway is getting used more than the old pathway. And once that shift happens, you can actually start to rewire it in so that rather than defaulting to the old pathway of perseverating thoughts or anxiety or pain, you're going into this new pathway that gets repeated over and over and over again until it sticks. In the same way as learning a new skill like tennis or driving, after a while it just becomes more automatic.
That is amazing. Yeah, I love that word, durability. Here at Shane Smith Law, we tend to get a lot of clients who have been in, extremely catastrophic car accidents, have some major injuries, including TBIs, and there is that level of almost built-in discouragement, if you will, with this is going to take so much time, and it's not going to make any difference. It's just going to be temporary, whatever, with certain therapies or treatments, what have you. But yeah, when what you're talking about, you said durability, are these lasting, forever changes that really don't take a whole lot of input. It does take will, and it does take effort and persistence, but yeah, if you can put that little bit of work in, it sounds like we'll have some major success stories. Can you think of somebody that's a recovery story that's really stuck with you?
Yeah, actually, my business partner is probably the one that was the most profound, because she was suffering with such severe disability when I met her. And she was feeling, she's only in her 40s, so she's not very old. She was feeling very discouraged about the situation that she had in front of her, and this idea that she had been deemed unemployable or permanently disabled. Like, those words really were so heavy in her heart. And so as she started to improve, after all these years of being stuck, it was just like a beautiful little bit of traction week after week after week. And so when she showed up at my house, it was actually such a beautiful story in the end. She showed up at my house with a bottle of wine in the middle of the pandemic and said, I want to start a cognitive wellness center, and I want to use the technologies that you used with me. I want to invest and bring those things to our community. But she said, I have one ask. And I said, what is your ask? And she said, I want to call it Broken Squirrel Wellness. And I was like, that is a very odd name. Why would you want to call it that? Like, I was worried initially it would repel people, because thinking that we thought they were broken, or that they were squirrels. And as we were talking, it really became clear to me at some point in everyone's life, they feel like they have a squirrel running around in their head or a squirrel running around in their chest with anxiety. And she said to me, when I was at the height of my disability, when I would walk in the kitchen, I couldn't find my keys, I was always losing my wallet, I had headaches all the time, I wasn't sleeping, my husband lovingly nicknamed me his broken squirrel. And she said, I want this to be a testament to how we can overcome the challenges that are in front of us, and what a human experience it is to go through some of these things and still triumph on the other side and live, your best life. And so, yeah, so that's always stayed with me. It's always been a driving force in what we do and why we do it. And it really reinforced to me that if we can treat the symptoms and the circuitry together and take an approach that embodies modern science and also taps into our body's own internal wisdom, that we could have better outcomes. And that's been the case as our clinic gets compared against all of the other clinics across Canada that are doing this work with vets and first responders. Our outcomes have been really, really encouraging.
Data doesn't lie. And when you're stacking those kind of outcomes, what else can you say? And I love that name, Broken Squirrel. That's really cool. With the explanation, it's just, and it sticks too. I don't think I'm ever going to forget that. So when you look at brain health and nervous system, treatment or care today, are there any advances you've seen that you're really excited about, really passionate about, whether that's from within your own company or just, the broader, treatment landscape in general?
I could talk about that for days. Yes. So many.
Try to keep it to a few minutes.
Yeah, it's really interesting because there are multiple different conduits into the nervous system that we don't typically use, but that are actually hardwired in our bodies. So one of the technologies that we use a lot is actually vibration. So I met these guys that worked in a psychophysiology lab in California that were doing research on how vibration impacts the nervous system. And as you think about it, when you're in the womb and your mother is talking or laughing or sounds are coming in, it's a vibration through fluid, because we're in a fluid-filled sac, that taps on our skin to give us a signal of safety or being held or laughter or love or any of those things. And then as our mom's moving around, same thing, there's pressure and waves created in that fluid, and that taps on our skin. Then when we come out of the womb, our mothers swaddle us. So again, pulsed pressure waves on the skin, they tap and rock us. And so this very primitive system that's actually controlled through our skin is really hardwired, and you can't smell in vitro or taste so much. So that touch sensation is actually a really powerful signal to our nervous system. And yet for people, once they get to a certain age and spankings start or sexual abuse happens, then touch becomes a very taboo thing that we reserve only for the people that we trust. And for some people, it's not a safety signal. It's exactly the opposite. So that some of those systems in our brain get sort of shut down. So what they were doing is using vibration and then looking at what was happening in the body, not just looking at mood and state change and stuff, but they were actually looking at blood biomarkers and what was happening in with inflammatory biomarkers, cortisol levels, all of that kind of stuff. And they actually found that certain patterns and frequencies of vibration would upregulate your nervous system. So if you're depressed and sluggish and tired all the time, it would make you feel more alert and more awake. And what we found in the research setting is that once you could upregulate their nervous system, if they were feeling really foggy or sluggish, they would actually perform better on cognitive tests, and they would be more likely to remember and lay down that learning tract. So we could use it to help people learn better. But then there were other frequencies of vibration that actually downregulated the nervous system. So like really downregulated. So they could really, the cortisol levels would drop. People would feel these deep states of relaxation and other kind of more calm things. So in our clinic, we use this chair. It's called the shift wave chair. And it's actually in use now in all the different sports leagues and various along the front lines of Ukraine with the aid workers and the soldiers and the kids that have lost parents. So we use it to help modulate the nervous system in a variety of different ways. And it just looks like a big old lawn chair. It's nothing fancy to look at, but it's incredibly powerful. So we use vibration therapies. We use another thing called a neuronova chair, which actually stimulates dopamine release. So it really helps people who are struggling with the craving and addiction anxieties and things like that. So we use other forms of vibration for other things. We use infrared light. We use our infrared light helmet to help people with the metabolic health of the brain cells. We're using lots of neurofeedback and lots of sound therapies. So light, sound, vibration, all of those kinds of things have a powerful input on the nervous system, and yet they're non-invasive. There's not negative side effects. So, we actually use a lot of different modalities to train the brain and the nervous system over time, and we're really having some great results with that.
That is amazing. And what fascinates me, I think, most about hearing about some of this, because I've not heard of most of those new technologies, is it's all external, right? So it doesn't rely on a patient or client to go and perform, tasks necessarily, or wear themselves out physically, or take these challenging batteries of assessments, over and over again. I mean, there may be some of that, but that is amazing. Wow, that's very, very cool. I hope our audience gets some of that.
And we're also measuring with like EEG and QEEG, all the other modalities actually more formally measure what's happening in the brain. And we do a lot of HRV measuring too, just to look at the flexibility of the nervous system over time. So we're trying to take a scientific approach, and yet looking for modalities that people can use. The way that we've also structured it in our clinic is really novel in that, I don't know what it's like in the US, but in Canada, you get like a block of funding for something like physiotherapy or occupational therapy. A lot of people think that healthcare is free in Canada, and it's not actually. If you're not in the hospital system, you're paying out of pocket or using workplace benefits or whatever to access. And so most of the workplace benefits plans are kind of in the $500 range for things like physio, and physio is physiotherapy, and I think in Canada and the US is getting up over $100 a visit now. So that covers maybe 3 to 5 visits if you're really lucky. And we know with neuroplasticity programming that 3 to 5 visits is not going to do it for you. It's not even close to what your body needs to actually rewire a new pathway. You need to be doing something repeatedly over a period of weeks. So what we decided to do was bring in all the neurotech, create like this little lounge area in our clinic. And for $150 a month, which is the cost of one neurophysio visit, you have unlimited use of all the neuroplasticity modalities. You could come 100 times if you want to. And so in the same way it would be like a gym membership, you go and use the gym machinery. In our clinic, you go and use the brain machinery. And so you have a fighting chance of actually getting neuroplastic change over time for, less than your benefits would have spent on 4 or 5 visits with a chiro, physio, massage therapist, whatever that might be. And we found that framing it that way has made it affordable, accessible, but most importantly, effective. And so, so that was one of the things that we decided to do to try to make it more manageable for people to be able to access the care they need.
That is such a cool structure, that subscription type, approach. That is, who'd have thought? That is amazing. I want to plug the audience in here for just a moment. Audience, you've heard about some very unique and amazing new and emerging technologies that are being used out there to treat brain injury or improve brain performance. If there's anything you have experienced or you've family or a loved one has done, some of these newer technologies that maybe folks may not have heard of, but you've had some great successes with those, please put those in the comments below. Those sorts of shares can really help other people who are really struggling and striving to find something that's going to work for them. Tanja, so much about the brain we mentioned earlier is unknown. Even more so about brain injury treatment. What are some of the common maybe misconceptions about brain recovery or treatment or how to improve brain performance that you wish people would understand a little bit better?
I think the first one you said earlier, people often believe that the older you get, the less likely it is that you're able to change your brain. And there is some truth to the fact that the more you've worn an old pattern in, the harder it is to undo that old pattern. But it is possible to undo it. We see people having extraordinary changes even up into their 90s. And there are some aspects of your brain that are actually better over time versus worse over time. We always think of, cognitive aging as a degenerating condition. But as we gain more and more wisdom and insight, there are actually parts of our brain that are smarter as we get older. And so, tapping into some of those strengths for people is really, really, really helpful. So that's one of the misconceptions. The other is that it has to be hard or, expensive or time consuming. While neuroplasticity programs do take a bit of time, they can also be very, very fun and joyful. And so novelty and play actually adds an element that helps your brain learn faster. So in fact, not only can it be fun, it should be fun in order for it to be most effective.
I think a perfect spot to wrap it. We're right up against time, Tanja. I know we're going to have you back here for a second episode. So, folks, that is going to do it for this episode of Mind Matters, Navigating Head Injuries and Concussions. Really want to thank Tanja Yardley for joining us today and really sharing her perspective, her expertise on brain health, innovation, and the work that's going on within the Brain Innovation Network. Her mission, as she's explained it to us, is an important reminder that when neuroscience, technology, and clinical practice come together, they can really open the door to better support and better outcomes for more and more people. To the audience, we would love to hear from you in the comments. Also, take a moment to look below, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the show, and then share it with somebody who might benefit from hearing about this. And remember, if you're in pain, call Shane at 980-999-9999. Join us next time as we reconnect with Tanja and discuss practical brain health tools and how natural rhythms of life can support better performance and healing. Until next time, take care.
In pain, so I call Shane. 980-999-9999. In pain, call Shane.